I know. Welcome into the halfway house, everybody. Tonight's topic.
Cheers,
Tonight's topic: the LIV and the PGA Tour might be getting back together. Is this happening?
Would you call it LIV or would you call it the PGA and PIF? How do we want to
I don't know, but the reports that are out there are saying that LIV would be under the PGA umbrella. That's what the report is out there, and that they would have a stake in the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
So
the PIF would have a stake in the PGA Tour. The PIF would have a stake in the PGA Tour, and LIV would fall under the umbrella.
Yeah. Yes. So the PIF has that 11% stake, and that's where the negotiations are right now. And that's the rumor that's out there that's been reported. We don't have any confirmed reports, but this is the first kind of report that has been out there. I think there needs to be a little bit more to it. But tonight on the Halfway House, we're going to talk about what would that look like if these two golf entities merged together, because they're different. And how would that look? So let's get right into it. If these two come back together, they play during the same season. One plays more events, one plays less events. Steve, I'll go to you first. What do you think is going to be the biggest impact that we could see if this happens?
There's a lot. There's a lot to unravel here. There's a lot to unravel with. I think the one thing that scares me about the changes that are being made in golf are you have the rich getting richer and making it harder for players to get to that next level, is what I see. You go back to the PGA Tour announcing that they're going to limit tour cards and they're only going to keep 100, and you've got these players coming into you've got all these other players that are coming in they're decreasing Korn Ferry cards from 30 to 20. You still have the 10 guys from the DP World Tour coming in. But what does that do for guys, those bubble guys? 125, 101 to 125 are going to have conditional status. I think the problem that I have is you already struggle with certain events on the PGA Tour to begin with anyway. So do you take some of these events that struggle and say, okay, let's look at, and I'll just use one, for example, Honda, that struggles. It's now Cognizant who sponsors the Honda. What was the Honda? Do you take an event like that and make it a LIV event, make it a team event that week? And then are you taking spots away and taking reps away from these guys outside the top 50, outside the top 100? Are you taking starts and spots away from some of these guys? And that is a concern of mine. I really don't. I don't like the signature events. I feel like the rich are just getting richer. I really do.
So your big thing right now, the first thing that comes to mind is that player impact of moving and shifting players around. So Dave, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you think that the player impact is going to be the biggest thing, or the schedule? What's your biggest impact?
I don't, like I said, I think, and we talked about this on Tuesday night, where the ink's not dried on the line yet, where I there's going to be some moving parts here. A lot of these guys that jumped to LIV initially, you had your big names, you had Bryson, you had DJ, you had Phil, you had Bubba, you had these guys that jumped, but a lot of these guys that jumped were that 100, the 125, 130 that jumped to get the payday. We've talked about Varner. No. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Where he's just come out and said, look, I got paid more to do this than I probably would make on the PGA. So, we're not, it's not an apples to apples, or you're not even, green apples to red Fujis here. You're apples to kumquats. at this point in time and comparing on how this is all going to go, because you're dealing with only a handful of guys, Brooks, Bryson, John Rahm, and maybe DJ, right now that slide back into that top 25, DJ maybe into the top 50. Everybody else is playing in that 100 to 150 range right now that jump to live. You don't Cam Smith. Okay. But you don't, a lot of those guys jump because they were going to get a guaranteed payday from live that they didn't necessarily have guaranteed, on the PGA right now. So, some of that needs to be figured out where, I'm worried about those PGA guys at 90 to 100 that may get bumped by some of these top guys. And how is all that gonna work? But I think the good majority of live guys are gonna have to fight to get into that top 100 spot there.
And that's what I think. I think they should have to fight to get back in there. So besides the players, now we don't know what would happen with these. Are they going to be two separate tours still? But if they were to merge back together, Steve, you kind of already talked to this, so I'm going to go to Dave first with this. What do you see as a possible merger of events? Do you just the live events go away and you come back on to what the PGA Tour schedule has, or do you see some of these live events staying and having that lasting impression on now the PGA if they merge together?
Yeah, if they merge, and I think we've always struggled with the PGA with the fall tour, where there hasn't been that I'll call it watchability, for lack of a better word. Being Rory and Tiger are sitting at the table right now, and they had this Rory Tiger golf league that the bubble literally burst on it. Does that come into fruition with a live team event, whether that is going out to some of these fall events and playing that way on a fuller schedule? Now these guys play a pretty full schedule as it is, but you're paid to play golf, and I think it's one of the greatest things in the world. Does the Rory and Tiger golf, does that bubble come back? And, do we have this virtual golf option that is going to happen there? Or do, you see these, that 100, to 150, playing a little bit more, in a more type of fall schedule. I like the team aspect. I always thought New Orleans, is a great event. And I think we need some more things like that. But I really think the big change with all this is going to come in that fall tour schedule, where you're going to start seeing some, more of those top names that we're used to seeing, during the spring and summer, maybe playing, in the fall here or there, where it goes to more of a year-round type business, where you're not playing for FedEx Cup points just here or there, where you can play, all year round and gain points.
So you're talking about having a year-long schedule, not like two different schedules that one's a lower division and upper division, because that's something that I kind of want to see, is that kind of relegation and stuff, not just the Corn Ferry Tour where you earn your way up to the PGA Tour, but something where it has that different season aspect in there, because that would be nice. It would give more of the fall schedule. And Steve, you and I kind of talked about this a little bit on the phone today. We talked about, hey, what about Australia, and some of these international places? What do you see that impact from live having on this tour schedule?
I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, because there's also this idea that the PGA Tour is trying to make a for-profit entity on this. They've been a non-for-profit for so long. I do think the way we look at it, I don't think the TGL goes away. I don't think any of the live players come back into the TGL, but I also think the TGL and what are the live events become the for-profit entity for the PGA Tour under the PGA Tour Entertainment umbrella. Now, what does that look like? There's a lot of questions. Do I think Adelaide stays? I do. Tiger has said he doesn't. The PGA Tour members have said they don't want to play globally. I've been very vocal that I don't think that it is the PGA Tour's responsibility to grow the game. I look at professional sports leagues worldwide, and there's the upper echelon, and you try and strive to get to that upper echelon. And the PGA Tour actually plays on more countries outside of the US than any other professional sports league in the world. So I think they do a great job in growing the game. They just don't play in the places that Norman and the Saudis want them to play. So do I think that the live idea stays? I do. I do think some of these events are for-profit entities that's where they're going to make their for-profit money, and that's how they're going to pay back, whether it's Strategic Sports Group and SSG and the PIF, because they obviously you now have investors that you owe money to. So do I think Adelaide stays? I do. Do I think an event, if the PIF is involved, I do think an event in Saudi Arabia has to stay. Yes. I think you see an event in Europe. I think you see an event in Asia, somewhere in Asia. I think you also, maybe do you incorporate the Zozo into that event in Asia? I also wonder the possibility of the players that stay on live. Do you have a wild card PGA Tour team that rotates in? So maybe Tiger goes and plays in one event, because Tiger's doesn't have the body to play in all of these events, and we all know that. But do they want Tiger there? Yes. Tiger's. Everybody knows Tiger shows up. It's ticket sales. That's how you generate revenue. So maybe Tiger and Rory and some of these other guys put a team together and go into a live event. There's a lot of wild card options that can be taken care of here, where you can add some of the PGA Tour players into the mix, but they're not in the overall team championship, maybe for the live team championship. So I would hate to see the Tour lose New Orleans. Dave, you mentioned New Orleans already. I would hate to see the Tour lose New Orleans from a team event, because I do like that event, and I think it's a great event for them to play. But do I see events like the CJ Cup in Dallas, the Cognizant in Palm Beach? When you look down the schedule, do you look at events like, here's a question. I'm going to throw it out there. Do you make the Canadian Open a live event?
So that's going to be,
no, you can't, because it's a national open.
But do you look at this? Do we have to look at this from a standpoint of, are there live events and are there PGA events? And then what is that identity? Because I go back to what I've said all along. Should the live just be a team aspect and the PGA be the individual aspect? Because that's the way I kind of would like to see it go here. I would like to see the PGA continue the way it is, live go just to being that team aspect, so you can play on that, and then live players can get kind of what they've wanted, where I can play in the team event, but every now and then I can go play on a PGA event on an off week. So I can play more golf. It really takes their whole argument of I need to play less golf out of the picture now, because they want to play more. They've realized that. But I think you need to have that international flair. I don't think there needs to always be that, hey, we need to grow the game and go over to these other areas, because I thought about that, Steve, and what's the biggest sport in the world?
Soccer.
Football.
Soccer. There are teams that come over here to do exhibition matches every now and again, but they've only really started because the U.S. sports have gone over to Europe and do showcases over here, but they just do like a showcase over here. It's really cool to see, but they're not really doing it to grow the game. They're doing it just for revenue generating. So they don't feel they need to grow. I feel it's more that American sports feel they need to grow globally because they're great sports, but do the people really want them where they are? Because if they don't want to see them, then you don't need to go there. You don't need to grow the sport.
Who wants to see the Giants and the Panthers play in Germany?
But here's the agreed. But at the end of the day, Greg might. He's a Giants fan, and it's a win for the Giants. So let's be real, the Panthers are terrible.
Well, hold up. Every loss that the Panthers have caused to another team, their 2 losses have caused the coach to get fired. So if the Giants lose, Dable's out. I'm just saying.
But I
which
feel
could be a win.
I like Dable.
When you look at globally, soccer is the number 1 sport in the world. Actually, I believe it's cricket is number 2.
Cricket or rugby?
And then no, football I think is 3. I think American football is 3. And when you look at the trend in sports, again, we go over there. The NFL goes over to Europe for 4 games. They play 1 game in Brazil, so they play 5 games globally, right? Outside of the continental U.S.
And most of them are Jacksonville.
They play 2 games in there, so yeah. the PGA Tour plays 8 events outside of the USA. Now, that does include Mexico and Canada. It includes Punta Cana, Puerto Rico. They play an event. They just played the Zozo. They play the Genesis as a dual event. So they're already playing in more countries than any of these other sports. What's Major League Baseball do? They go over to Japan and play, and they go to England and play a series, right?
Yeah.
They
And
play
Mexico.
2 series. I thought they didn't play Mexico this year.
Not this year, but
Not this year.
next
but
year.
They've
I
done
think
it.
yeah.
They're going
So-
back next year.
So the PGA Tour already plays more events and more rounds outside of the U.S. than any other sporting group out there. I just think that – do I think that it's good to take the game globally? I do. But, again, these guys are consultants is basically what they are. You can say that they're independent contractors, but people are trying to say, they play under these contracts that the PGA Tour has them take care of. And if you're an independent contractor, you still have to play by the rules. But at the end of the day, they can pick and choose. And I can tell you right now, Tiger doesn't want to play globally because he can't physically. Doesn't want to have to sit in a plane that long. Doesn't want to have to do all these other things. And then you have these other guys. They're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want they already play enough events. You have to play 15 events to keep your card. So why do they want to play more than that?
So, well, besides that, the international thing, I think, is going to be something that's on the table, but I don't think it's going to have as much of an impact on this merger if it does come to fruition. But we've talked about the schedule. We've talked about the players that are on there. But I want to get back to kind of those players that we talked about. One of the biggest topics has been, hey, these players took all this money to go over there. And a lot of players have said, well, they need to pay that back, or they need to do something. They need to give that back to something. I don't see this happening. I don't think it's fair. I think you went over there, you got that job. Didn't you go back and do this? You don't have to give that money back. It wasn't like you took money from the PGA Tour. So what are your guys' thoughts on it? So Dave, what's your thoughts on that argument
you took a new job, and after your 3-year contract, you've realized this job hasn't really worked out in the best for me. And, you're open to, coming back to your old job. I think all 3 of us have left a job at one point in time or another and gone back to it at one point in time or another. Should there be some consequences to some certain individuals that may have recruited, badmouthed, or said other things? Potentially, but it's no worse than anybody in Major League Baseball or the NFL has said about former employers. And then when a dollar sign is thrown around there, everybody is happy. So it's, again, it's going to come down to the ink drying on the dotted line with everything. But I don't think that the repercussions as it sits, now at the first Friday in November are going to be any more severe than they were a year and a half ago when this started. And I think they're actually going to be less. That I think everybody's just tired of how far this is drug out, and they want to get it done and over with and just move on with their lives.
I think that's a good thing to say. Is just let's move on from what this was and try to build golf back to a good entity. So
I also think just to finalize that topic, Dave, and I agree with everything you said. I do think if these players are allowed back, I don't think that events like these signature events, the players is an iffy one for me, because if this falls under the PGA Tour umbrella, the players is one of those events that I'm like, do they? But I think the other signature events, and the players has a fuller field anyway than a lot of the signature events do anyway, so you can absorb that a lot easier. But I think that the signature events should be left to the players that stay loyal. At this point, I really do. I feel like that is a way for those guys to reward them, because some of those guys, I mean, the list of players that got the money, the original money that they got from Strategic Sports Group and the money that was handed out, the list of players on that list wasn't everybody that's a PGA Tour member and wasn't everybody that was ever a PGA Tour member. So I think that there is you have to look at the idea of, okay, these guys got this money. but now you still have to take care of future players. You have to take care of guys that literally came into this umbrella, and you say, okay, you didn't go. I'll use Wyndham Clark, for example. Obviously a great player. He's won a few signature events. He's won a major. Didn't go to live, although there were some strong rumors that he was going to go. And then what do you do with Wyndham, where you say, okay, Wyndham didn't go. How do you reward Wyndham for staying loyal to the PGA Tour brand and saying, this is where my future is?
I think that's going to be the biggest topic is, what do we do there? So with the last thought here, what I want to ask you, and just really quick, one quick answer. What is the one thing that, if they do anything, what's the one thing you want to see out of this merger? Steve, I'll ask you first.
I don't know that I want to see it. I think it'll be beneficial. And I think that is, and granted, next year, the Champions Tour, all of your TV deals are up because someone else turns 50 next year, at the end of next year. And all their TV deals expire at the end of next year, all because Tiger turns 50. And I do think these players being brought back into the mix that could play in the Champions Tour with Tiger possibly, I actually think that is a better move long-term for the health of the game than, you can get the Graham McDowells and the Henrik Stensons and all these other guys that can play in the Champions Tour, and there can be some really good competition, much like Jack and Arnie when they both played on the Champions Tour together, and then Hale Irwin came in and dominated. And so I do think that the overall health of the game, especially as these players that we saw growing up are now getting to that point of getting on the Champions Tour, I think is going to help grow that brand as well. So I think that's a huge benefit. And I think that's something that I can't wait to see happen from that aspect.
Okay. So Dave, what's the one thing in this merger that you want to see to the positive?
I think it comes back to just the overall sense of better golf being played by everybody. Where you have the best play, you're not just waiting for the majors to come around, to see, these guys come in and play. You're going to get Scotty and Brooks and Bryson and Rory and Tom Kim, and maybe if Anthony Kim, finds a fountain of youth and minus 50 pounds.
That's a huge wild card. Wow, that's a wild card on them. I don't think he can compete on the PGA Tour.
But you have these guys that all come back, and you're to look at the leaderboard like we look at the Masters and the US Open, and you're going to see these guys, and at the end of the day, we all have the flags hanging behind us. Yeah, do I want to see him playing at Arnie's at Bay Hill? And, do I want to see him playing at all these other places? I sure do. I want to see him come up to John Deere, and I want to see Bryson try and drive 14 out of the 18, greens that are there. I just think at the end of the day, it makes watching golf and being around golf more fun.
Well, I agree with you both. I think that it brings everyone back together. I think it'll end this divide that's out there. So it's now we just got to wait and see, and hopefully we'll have more from you. Maybe we'll come back with another halfway house, but definitely check us out on the Golfing Dads Tavern. We will be on there and have this topic as a regular topic on there. So,
and don't forget to like and subscribe so you get the alerts on YouTube. Please like and subscribe.
And once again, if you have a topic in the comments, please say what topic you want us to talk about next on the halfway house. So, cheers, everybody.
Cheers, y'all.
I'm really fortunate, man. I mean, that's an opportunity to build something that's
viral on our TikTok that somebody was commenting about playing Whistling Straits for 700